Good morning, everyone. Britt Simon here. Happy Saturday to you. I hope everything is going well. We can take some questions from people. Answer all your DV lottery questions. Be happy to do that for you. As ever, you can always ask me questions at brittsimonsays.com, right? brittsimonsays.com. Here's a question and an answer for you. Why do I call myself Brit Simon? Well, because I'm British originally. My name is actually Simon. And so Brit Simon isn't my actual name. And I'm not called Brittany, as some try and call me. It's just that I am British Simon. Just a bit of trivia for you. But anyway, let's talk about the topics of the day. First thing, obviously, just in case any of you didn't catch yesterday's live, we've effectively already won the UK lawsuit. That's great news. I had a great conversation with a young couple from Chargeable to the UK yesterday, who are one of the winning new winners for DV 2025. And I'm quite sure that the government is going to do all it can to push through those cases, the 44 cases or whatever number of those cases want to proceed with their case. They'll push through those cases in an expedited manner. I'm sure of that. We will continue the lawsuit for now until we get some assurances about what the fix has been. Are the 44 cases that have been made into winners, are they the only cases that should have been in that first 23,000 numbers? Or, and how do we know that? How do we know that the government is telling us the truth, right? For that reason, we will continue to press for some transparency and also to make sure that we can push those cases through with an expedited processing. It's not enough for them to just say, yeah, okay, you're right, we've released some new winners. They have to now try and fix the problem they've caused for those 44 winners, because some of those have got very, very low case numbers. They would have had their green cards a year ago, right? If the government had played fair almost a year ago. So the couple I was speaking to last night have got a case number of EU 600 and something. So they would have been current from October last year. They could have got an interview from October last year if the government had done their job properly. And so now it's not appropriate to say, well, we might process their DS-260 and maybe they'll get an interview. And no, you're going to process their DS-260 quickly, and you're going to schedule an interview for them, and you're going to do everything you need to do, Mr. Government, because you've already screwed up. Bye, Han. Bye, Sean. My daughter is heading up to Lake Tahoe to go camping. How cool is that? Anyway, right. So let's see. So anyway, so that's the lawsuit. So will imposing a passport increase the chances of winning? Yes, it does. If you've got a passport, a valid passport, and if they introduce this passport rule, it reduces the number of entries into the lottery and thereby increases your chance of selection. Of course, that's a sort of a high-level view of the world. So let me put some numbers into that. When they had the passport rule in place, the number of entries dropped down to about 14 million entries. When they removed the passport rule in the first year, where there was a lottery after the passport rule was taken out, there were about 25 million entries, so 9 million extra entries. Now, of those, we know that about 10% of all the entries get disqualified for being fraudulent entries, duplicate entries, and a much higher percentage get disqualified, by the way, for the photos. So number one reason to get disqualified is you can't take a photo, apparently. It baffles my mind, but I'm working on that to make that a little bit easier for some of you to take a photo. But some of you are destroying your own chances because you can't take a bloody photo. So fine, I've been battling with you for 10 years. Now I'm going to solve your problem, right? So I'm going to release something shortly in the next few weeks to solve that problem. Second thing is, some of you can't read instructions. Some of you think it's okay to enter the lottery multiple times, and you do whatever games you want to play to do multiple entries. Well, the government's smarter than you are, and they're able to detect those multiple entries, and so they disqualified, for example, in 2025, we know now that they disqualified 2.5 million entries for that reason. So there are going to be less entries and therefore more chance of you being selected. Now, that will be more apparent in certain regions than others. In Europe, for example, most people have got a passport, and to travel around Europe, you don't even need a passport. But Europeans in general, unlike Americans, for example, in general, your typical European either has a passport already or can get one very simply. And relatively speaking, the cost of getting a passport is relatively small, and the time it takes to get a passport is relatively short, right? If we switch to Africa, there are some countries in Africa where getting a passport will take a long time, where people are relatively poor, and so they don't, in their normal lives, need a passport, right? And so those people don't have passports until they're winners. I've had some really interesting comments, by the way, on this whole passport thing, and I'll just digress a minute on this. Some people don't understand, can't empathize why this is a problem, and frankly unfair for people in some of those poorer countries. Let me try and paint a picture for you. Let's say you earn $400 a month, right? And a passport costs, let's say, $70, $80, right? Out of the $400 a month, you are not jetting off every weekend to do a city tour like we do in Europe, right? You're not doing that. You're not taking cruises every 5 minutes, because you're only earning $400 a month. And on $400 a month, you're pretty much your income is so low that throwing $80 or $70 out the window to get a passport, which is something that you're never going to need in normal life, is a waste of money. Now, obviously, as some people have pointed out to me, if you win the lottery, you're going to need a flight, you're going to need to pay the fees, you're going to have to move to America, and it'll be expensive. So some people make this sort of connection and cannot seem to get their heads around and empathize what it means, the difference between I won the lottery and therefore I'm going to find some way of paying these expenses, versus I never needed a passport before, but now I have to pay $80, let's say 20% of my monthly income or whatever it might be, on the chance, the 1 in 100 year chance that I might get selected for the lottery. If you can't understand how unfair that is, I just don't understand your lack of empathy. Now, I understand that many of you are excited about the passport rule, and me too. There's some good aspects to it. It will cut down fraud. It will increase the chances in certain situations. But it is blatantly unfair to some people in some poor countries. And all of your stupid explanations to me about, well, if they can't afford to get a passport, then they shouldn't be entering the lottery and thinking about going to America. That is a stupid comment to make, right? It just is. And it's because you lack empathy and you can't understand or put yourself into a position and that these people are actually in, and you don't understand that we're not talking about the same thing. When you tell me about them having to have the money to go and move to America and pay the fees and everything else because they're a winner, that is not the same situation as throwing $80 out the window on the chance, the 1 in 100 year chance of being selected to get a passport that might last 10 years. So whoop-de-doo, you can enter 10 lotteries with that one passport. But other than that, you're never traveling anywhere because you're not taking little vacations everywhere because you live in a freaking poor country. So please, some of you, could you try and empathize a little bit more, get your heads around that thing, okay? Rant over. honestly, I don't understand how some of you can't seem to process that. And I agree. Like I say, I agree. It's a good thing. But there is a bit of unfairness to it, and it is in my opinion, it is not the spirit of the lottery. The lottery is supposed to be a free process to enter for anyone that wants to enter, that's eligible to enter. And there will be people from very, very, very poor countries where literally the annual salaries are like $3,000 and $4,000 a year, right? But the 3 or 4 or 5 months it takes to get a passport, or the $50, $60, $70, $80 it takes to get a passport, is an unfair burden and restriction, and obviously designed to keep some people out of the lottery. And who do you think it's going to keep out the lottery? Brown people. That's who. Wonder why we're doing it, right? So there you go. All right. Okay. So let's switch back to normal discussion. Let's take some more questions. Hello, Simon. How long do you think I can buy a vehicle after landing to Michigan? About 5 minutes, but per time. You don't need any special permission or anything to be able to buy a vehicle. Now, it's helpful if you can immediately insure a vehicle. And for that, you probably will need to have, a driver's license and that sort of thing. So in practical terms, it may take you a few days to get a driving license, depending on whether you've got an international license or whatever. And so it may take you a little bit longer than that. But there's no, in terms of buying a vehicle, there's no restrictions on buying a vehicle. Okay. Joe K, serving the nation now. Indeed. WOC, any update for ABD? I don't know what WIC means. Any update for Abu Dhabi? No update. We did get another batch of 2NLs for Nairobi. They took another significant batch, which is great news. That happened. I don't think we're going to see many more or any more big batches in any embassy. We'll see probably some 1s and 2s here and there. And because of the UK winners, we're going to see some in London, obviously, and perhaps some other embassies. But we're not going to see many 2NLs coming now. They've actually done a very good job, I have to say, because Nairobi came online. How many did Nairobi take? Let me just check that. Overall, what am I doing? DB charts. Let's go check the data. Let me show you the data I'm checking. We're going to check the most useful website on the internet. Share screen, entire screen, this one. Yep. Okay, so, right, we're going to go to Zarthisius' website. We're going to check Nairobi, and I want to see the second batch. Yeah, so on July 21, they took 370 interviews in Nairobi, which was great. But then they took another 166 in August 8th. Well, that's when they were reported. They actually came a few days earlier than that, right? Those together, what are we talking about? 400, 530 or whatever it is, 536 interviews, which would be something in the region of almost 1,000 people, right? So by adding 1,000 people sort of out of the blue, they've made this number look a little bit better. I had said from the very beginning, if you've watched me, from the very beginning, if you've watched my my live sessions in DB25, you know that I had a target in mind for this number, which is the number of people scheduled, to be at 65,000. Now, they're almost going to hit that, right? They're at 64,000. That's pretty good. However, more of those 64,000 are ineligible now because of the travel ban than I would have expected. So they're still going to be under. They're not able to meet the caps. They're not able to meet the quotas at all. We are not going to see 52,000 visas issued. We're going to see a number lower than that issued. Probably, I'm guessing between 46 and 48,000. 46 on the low end. I think that would be a surprise. 48,000 on the high end. I think that would also be a surprise if we get to 48,000 in SEAC. There'll be some adjustment to status numbers on top of that. So it will mean that they will actually waste about 2,000 to 3,000 visas. So some of you are still asking, by the way, is there a risk that visas will run out in DV25? No, there is absolutely no possible way that visas will run out in DV25. Some of you might look at this number and say, well, there's 17, nearly 18,000 people ready, scheduled for interview in August. And I would say, no, there isn't. 6,000 of those, almost 6,000, 5,900 and something, are no-shows from previous months. Only less than 12,000 are interviews scheduled in August and September. Out of those 12,000, probably 1,000 or 2,000 of those are already ineligible for their visa because of the travel ban. Other people will not show up for their interview, like no-shows. There's always no-shows, right? Then some people will be denied, right? So the 18,000 number here is probably only going to yield maybe about 8,000 at most, 8,000, maybe 8,500, visas from that group, right? That would be extremely optimistic. The 3,000 here in 221G is not going to yield many more than about 1,000. So maybe we get 9,000 on top of the 37,000 or so that we've got right now. It's that sort of situation, and that's where I'm getting the 48,000 number from. Is that sort of situation. Now, like I say, Nairobi did make this math a little bit better. Before Nairobi was issuing its numbers, I was thinking we were going to get 46,000, maybe 47,000. I'm now more comfortable saying, yeah, I think it's going to be more like 48,000, 47 to 48,000, maybe a little bit more than 48,000, but not much. So there's going to be visas wasted this year. As for other embassies, whether they're going to take big batches and not, like I say, I don't think so. But there you go. Hello, tell us more about the passport and DV Lottery 27. Will they say it in the end of September? Because in our country, it takes up to 4 months. Yeah. This is the thing, Director Paul Angelis. Takes 4 months, right? So if I were you, I would probably be applying for a passport now if you can afford it. If you can't afford it, I understand. There's, I believe the government have already caused themselves a headache. They in 2022, the earlier implementation of the passport rule was struck down by a court because the government had failed to follow the proper procedure in rolling out the passport rule in 2019, right? And what I mean by that is that they hadn't given an adequate notice period, and that, that's what they're supposed to do. Now they've released the notice period this time with a 45-day comment period, right? And that 45 days runs out in September, mid-September. They then have to update the rules of the lottery 30 days in advance of the lottery starting, right? And they don't have 30 days in advance of the lottery starting. So if they implement this rule for DV 2027 in October, they will have to somehow break one of the rules. They either cut short the comment period at 45 days, or they cut short the 30-day update to the rules prior to the lottery starting. I don't know how they're going to do that. I don't know how they're going to squeeze that time into the time they've given themselves. Or they delay the entry period, which is possible. They could push back the entry period. That's a possibility. That remains to be seen. But if they really want to make this happen in DV 2027, they've got some work to do, and I'm not sure they understand they've got that work to do because, let's face it, this government is not the brightest bunch of people. So there you go. Thank you, Anne. All right, so hope that makes things a little clearer, Director Paul and Angelis. Is the passport necessary all for the kids or just the principal? Good question. So if they implement the passport rule, it'll be for each of the people that are entering the lottery themselves, right? In other words, the principal. So if I'm doing my entry and including my wife and kids, right, they don't have to have the passports in order to be on my entry. Okay, it's only me that would need the passport. If my wife then enters, then she needs her passport, and she would include me and the kids on her entry, right? The kids don't need a passport in order to enter the lottery. Okay, so main entrance is what you need. Now, if one of those kids is over 18 and entering the lottery from themselves as well, which is technically possible, then that person would also need their own passport for their own entry. But you only need your passport for your own entry, right? There is also a part of the passport rule, by the way, that says you're going to have to take a photo or scan the passport into the system. That is another thing that I don't think they've got time to do. That's a piece of software development they have to do. I don't think they've got time to do that because they're not very good at software development. So, we'll have to see if they can do all of that. Okay. I've submitted my DS260 on 18th of August for DV26. Is there a way I could know if my case is marked as complete by KCC? When you submit your DS260, it is immediately marked as completed. And completed in that, when you see that in the CX system for your case, that means that you submitted it and it's locked at that point. The government then go through a processing of that, and the only way that you can check whether your DS260 is processed or not is to email KCC. But I would tell you that if you've got a high case number, there's really no need to waste their time in emailing. It's kind of interesting, but there's really no need to waste their time. I'm in the back of my mind, I actually wish a few people would email KCC and ask about their DS260 processing with higher case numbers. Because a rumor is going to get started, like it gets started every bloody year, and every year I have arguments with people about this. And there are people who believe that DS260 processing is only by case number order, which is not true. Every year, I'm aware of cases that are high case numbers that get processed early because those people had a simple to process DS260 and submitted early. Then every year there are going to be people who submit early who take a long time for their cases to get processed. Some of those people will have low case numbers and they'll be waiting for their DS260 to be processed before they can be scheduled. Others will have high case numbers. And from the high case numbers, some of you will jump to a false conclusion that, they were delayed in processing because of their high case number. That's not the case. But some of you will argue till the cows come home with me, and you will just not accept the pieces of evidence that make your argument incorrect. And I know that's going to happen. It happens every year. But oh well. Here we go. Current update about Sierra Leonean national who won the DV lottery 25, sir. What does that mean? What? You're going to give me an update, or you want me to update? What are you asking? I don't know. We're stuck in Abu Dhabi. Yep. The visa bulletin is coming soon. Yeah, the visa bulletin should be published this coming week. With a bit of luck, it could be late, but I doubt it. I think it'll be published during this week. We'll see. Now, one of the reasons that it could be late, and a gentleman called Mike and I are having this sort of discussion at the moment, is there could be some changes being made to that visa bulletin right now, because the UK lawsuit means that they've had to just release some DV25 winners, and they also need to be releasing some DV26 winners. And so really they should be modifying the visa bulletin to show the number of UK entries. And they got to figure out what to do about the Cuban winners in DV26, right? Which is another aspect that we've pointed out that they've screwed up. And so it'll be interesting to me what they do. If they publish the visa bulletin, is that going to have all the country numbers on there, as we normally expect for the September visa bulletin? Is it going to have that? That's one thing. And is that information going to be corrected vis-a-vis Cuba and UK? We'll have to see. I kind of think they're going to publish it with a mistake, to be honest. But we'll see. We'll have to see that. Olivia, I want you to explain the document called Confirmation of Global Support Strategy Registration that I saw the US Embassy in Bangkok is requesting. What the hell are you, Olivia? Confirmation of Global Support Strategy Registration. What the hell? How am I supposed to explain that document when all I've got to go on is your few words from something that the Bangkok Embassy? I don't know anything about that document. If you showed me the document, maybe I could read it for you, or you could read it yourself, but I don't know. Yanet, how you doing? God bless you too, Yanet. Thanks, Britt Simon. Got my visa in July. Good. Doha Embassy from Kenya. I've learned quite a lot from you through About DV through your channel. I'm very pleased, Elvin. Congratulations. If the sponsor used the prior I-134 for AFDV25, is that okay? How old? Which prior I-134? You should really use the current one. But the instructions as to what will and won't be accepted is on the instructions for the I-134 document itself. It tells you when they update it. It tells you when that will be accepted, when it won't be accepted, and so on. But let me put it this way. If you go to a September interview and you're asked for an I-134 and you present an I-134 that can't be accepted because it's out of date or something like that, then you are officially an idiot, okay? Because you have given yourself a problem that was so easily avoidable by A, reading about the I-134, and B, just getting a new one, right? Please don't screw up your cases for really very simply avoidable stuff. Don't do that, please. And if you do that, then frankly, maybe moving to America isn't for you, because it's going to be complicated for you to move to America. And if you can't figure out the safest way to attend your interview, without giving yourselves unnecessary headaches, then, in September, when there's no time to correct all this stuff, then I think you're probably not prepared for the incredible challenges, and it really is challenges, of moving to a new country and starting a life there. It's tough. It's very, very hard to move to another country and start a life there. It's not for everyone. Not everyone is cut out for it. And if you can't work out simple stuff, frankly, you're probably not cut out for it, in reality. Hello, Britt. I forgot to write the duties of my work in the DS-260, so does it affect my visa? No. So something about the DS-260 processing. It does not matter how badly you do the DS-260. You will still be scheduled for interview, right? That might be a shock. Some of you think, I saw a question this morning, and the question was something like, what mistakes can you make in the DS-260 that will disqualify your case or cause you not to be scheduled? And the answer is nothing you write in there will cause you not to be scheduled. If you write something stupid in there that's not correct, mainly, that is invalid, then yes, that can disqualify your case. If you lie in the DS-260, again, you're officially on my idiot list. That's not a wise thing to do, and you should know that by now. I've been talking to you enough about telling the truth and not telling lies and so on. So please don't create lying situations in your DS-260s. Very bad idea to document a lie which will always haunt you. You don't want to do that, right? With the American government, they're not idiots. Much as I complain about the current administration in general, the American government are not idiots, and so they will use your words and your information that you attest to, you sign for this thing. They'll use that against you if you ever apply for citizenship or anything like that in the future. So you don't want to create any lies in there, right? Now, nothing you put in there will stop KCC scheduling your interview, because KCC have no power to adjudicate a case, meaning they cannot stop you being interviewed as such. I mean, they can forget to schedule you and that sort of thing, but but they have no power to say, well, we're not going to schedule that case because we don't like the way they filled out their DS-260 and we think they're not a good person or whatever, right? They have no power to do that. Okay. Hello, Britt Simon. Will there be a second draw? There is only a second draw, Brian, in years where the number of selectees chosen in the first draw is a low number. I think that's very unlikely to be the case in DV26 because the case numbers we're already aware of suggest, not 100% confirmed, but suggest that there's a fairly high number of selectees in DV26. But we don't know the number of selectees yet officially, and so we'll have to wait and see, which means I can't really give you a 100% certain answer. Okay. Tony, how you doing? Do you think KCC will still send 2NL for DV25 after the VB release this month for DV26? Yes, there will be some 2NLs, but just not many. There's going to be some because there's going to be some for the UK winners, right? That at least will be some, right? I'm aware now of 3 of the 44 cases that are winners. So that's my expectation is that there's at least going to be those 3, right? But there could be more people of the 44 that are actually going to process their cases. We'll have to see. Okay. What are the things we need to be cautious about if we're going to have our interview not in our original embassy? Good question, Robert. When you go to a foreign embassy, depending on how foreign that is, like let's say, people are sometimes surprised when they go, for example, to the embassy in China. So imagine there are, for some reason, I'm not quite sure why, but there are a number of African cases that go off to China, right? So what you have to understand is that in China, they're not used to looking at an Ethiopian education document or an Ethiopian birth certificate or a Kenyan, document or any other documents from any other place in the world. It's not just about Africa, it's anywhere, right? And so when you go for your interview, one of the challenges you have when you're appearing at a foreign embassy is that they're more likely to put you in 221G while they check your education, while they check your documents and so on. And their process for doing that is to contact your home embassy so that they can ask about, here's a document we have for education. Does it meet your standards? That's what they'll ask, right? Because if it's established in, let's say, Ghana, I'm just going to pick on Ghana. It doesn't matter where, but let's say it's established in Ghana. And let me use the UK for a minute because I know the system there a little bit better. In the UK, the education system is such that in order to qualify for the DV lottery, you have to have at least A-level education, right? And you should actually have passed at least 2 or maybe 3 of those because that's the level you would need in order to be accepted into university. And that's the point. It's the point at which you're able to enter university. It's not the number of years that you went through education. People get that wrong. People misunderstand that. It's not the number of years. It's the fact that you can then get into university, right? Immediately with no further qualifications or examinations needed, right? So if you turn up in China with your English education and you've got, let's say, GCE O levels, but you don't have A levels, how are they supposed to know that that's not a valid level of education? The only way they would know that is by contacting the London embassy and getting the London embassy to verify, yeah, here's what we use. We use A levels as being the required level, right? So unless they're going to Google things on the internet to figure that out, they have to ask your home embassy. So yes, there is that sort of concern, Robert, when you go for an interview in a foreign embassy. It's like, how do they check those documents, both for education, birth certificate, marriage certificate, and so on. Legal marriages, in some African countries, there are traditional and legal marriages. In some of those countries, traditional marriage carries all the weight it needs. In other countries, it doesn't. It needs to be supported by a legal process carried out either before or after the traditional marriage. How would the embassy in China know that? They wouldn't. So they're going to have to contact the original, a more local embassy. So that's basically what you need to think about. The other thing is that you typically do the medical in the place where you're interviewing, right? So if you're in the embassy in China, you can't have your medical performed in Kenya and then pop over to China for your interview. So you've got to be medically processed over in that embassy, and then you don't really know the ways to get documents approved and that sort of thing. It might be a problem in some of those embassies. So that's basically the answer to your question, Robert. Sean, hi sir, thanks for your advice and guidance on the journey. My case just went ready in Bangkok, Thailand. Embassy, I'm AF52K and I was stuck in Nairobi and now I'm scheduled on the 9th of September. Fantastic, well done. Now, Sean, are you physically in Bangkok, right? If not, one choice you have, a choice that is available to you, is to contact the Nairobi embassy if you're actually in Nairobi, and you could transfer your case back to Nairobi. A transfer is possible once you've been scheduled, and that transfer takes place and is organized between the two embassies. And the process, roughly speaking, is this. You would speak to the Nairobi embassy and say, can you take my case? And if you take my case, can you be sure that you can schedule me by the end of September, right? That piece, that second piece, is the risk of that process. You are not entitled to get the same interview date that you already had in Bangkok, your September 9th date, right? So you have to ask Nairobi whether they can pretty much guarantee you that. If they come back and say, yes, no problem, we will, if you ask the embassy to transfer you, we'll take your case and we will schedule you. Or, yes, we've held a place for you on September 16th or whatever, right? So you could then, once you've got the confirmation from Nairobi, you contact Bangkok and ask them to transfer the case to Nairobi. And generally speaking, it's fairly okay to do that. I mean, if you want the safest possible thing, then go to Bangkok. But if it's more convenient and less expensive for you to interview in Nairobi, you can do that too. Okay, in your particular case, and that goes for other people too. But you have to listen very carefully to what I just explained, the way I explained it. Right? You have to contact the target embassy first, and you have to ask them and get assurance that they're going to give you a scheduled interview. And if they don't, then that will destroy your case, right? So you have to be aware of that risk. Is it worth it? It's up to you. Some people have done that, and earlier in the year, I'm much more comfortable with people doing it. But in September, that's a bit risky. So, I don't know that you want to do it. It's really up to you, okay? Hello, Britt. My case number is 11K, lottery 26. When should I get an interview? Now, everyone's got to explain to Ahmad why I've now got to go out and kill an angel, right? Because Ahmad has made the mistake of giving me the year, which is good, and the number, which is good, but I don't know the region. And he expects me to answer his question. And I can't do that, Ahmad, because I don't know what region you're in. You could be in Asia, you could be in Africa, you could be in Europe, you could be in a ludicrously high number for South America or Oceania, but I doubt that. But it's one of those three big regions, and I don't know which one. And it makes a big difference, right? So, bad luck, Ahmad. Good try. Kill an angel. Hello, Mr. Simon. I wish to know, what could be the easiest way you can advise me to take me, wife, over to the United States. I've got dyslexia, and your way of talking, and in all caps, is making that much worse. So, thanks for that. Advised me to take me, wife, over to the United States since we got married after I had received my visa. You're giving me nothing to go on. Is it a DB lottery visa? When did you process? When did you get married, and so on? I can tell you that until the end of September, you could go back to your original embassy if you're a DV lottery candidate and you've been issued your visa. You could contact the embassy and they could say, yeah, we can tack on your wife. We believe your marriage is totally genuine. I'm a little suspicious why you didn't marry her before you went for your interview. That's what you should have done. You should have got married earlier. But let's say you met and fell in love and it was too late to add her to the DV case. Okay. You can contact the embassy and say, hey, I got married. I'd like to take my wife. Can you schedule an interview and I'll fill out the DS-260 for my wife? You could do all of that. Okay. So try it. You don't need any tips. You don't need me to write the letter. You just need to exercise some chutzpah, as they say, right? Some guts. What does expedite or expediting a case mean, and how does it help a lottery winner? Okay, so you're probably saying that word because I used that word earlier in regard to the UK entries. Expedite as a word means do something faster. Give it a special process, like put it on a rush order, right? It means, hey, normally DS-260s are processed in, it takes a few weeks, but for these UK entries, we're going to expedite their processing, rush them through, so that if somebody submits a DS-260 this week, we're going to have that processed by the end of the week. Expedite meaning rush it through the system. How does it help a DV lottery winner? Well, for the UK entries, it's going to be very important that they get that sort of expedited processing. Now, in some visa categories, you can pay the government for expedited processing. I actually did once for an H1 visa. We paid for expedited processing, and they still took way too long to process the bloody thing, so it was a waste of money. I eventually got that particular H1 visa, so it was okay in the end. But yeah, so there are some visas where you can pay for expedited processing. You can't pay for that in DV lottery. The only reason that we're going to expect that in the UK cases is because of the lawsuit. The government will have to assign a lawyer, and that lawyer is going to answer to the judge. And we are going to ask the judge, hey, we want you to make the government perform properly. So we want full transparency. We want some more information. Yes, they've made some people winners, but we want to know they're going to treat those winners properly. We want to know they're going to rush their cases through. We want to know that, right? That's part of why we've... Oh, I think I might have just... yeah, I might have just gone black for a moment there, so I'm sorry about that if I did. But yes, it was... I'm hoping my audio is working. Yeah, we'll see. So yeah, so we where was that about the lawsuit? So we'll have to see how how well they sort of process those cases through, and I'm going to make sure I'm going to do my best anyway to make sure they process those cases correctly. Okay, so that's what expediting means. Hi Simon, if embassy take passport and they said we will call you, but now the SEAC status shows refused, not AP. I received a blue paper with AP at the time of interview. What can I do in this situation? AP that you're talking about, I think you're talking about 221G. 221G in SEAC shows up as refused, but it's refused with a long piece of text, right? And it says something about, I can't remember the wording now, but it says something about follow the instructions you've been given by the consular officer or something. So it might be okay that they say refused. It could mean nothing more than that. It could mean that they've decided after your interview to finally refuse you. So if you get refused with a very small amount of text, a small amount of description, then it could mean that. That does happen sometimes. What they say to you in the interview, if they say, hey, I'm going to approve your visa, or hey, you're going to be on 221G, none of that is legally binding. They are free to change their mind if they want. Okay. Okay, Juliet. Will the bulletin for 2026 begin this month, and is 29K considered a high or low case number? 29K where? 29K in Africa, Asia, Europe? Where? Another angel's going to be killed now. And yes, this next visa bulletin that will be published this week, that will be for DV26. Okay, no more changes for DV25. Hi, Simon. I'm case 30K in Kenya, Nairobi. Is it possible I can get 2NL by now? 30K Africa in Kenya, Nairobi. Okay. Is it possible you get your 2NL by now? Which year? Victor, please. That's a third angel. Third angel is now going to be killed. But the angels are not doing very well this morning. It's like, Simon 0, angels 3. No, Simon 3, angels 0. I don't know. Is failing to include some social media accounts on the DS260 a very big deal in case someone forgot to include? Can you be denied a visa for that? It's a very unwise thing to do. Here's why. The current administration is doing everything it can to be a pain in everybody's ass, right? They are particularly enjoying being anti-immigration, anti-foreigners, frankly. They have destroyed the tourist industry in this country already. We haven't even seen that come through, but I can tell you when I was flying back from Europe recently, the planes were empty on the way back. They have really screwed up the tourist industry here. They're costing us billions of dollars because they're being unfriendly to foreigners. From an immigration point of view, they have looked at certain people and tried to find an excuse to take those people's visas away. And one of the excuses they can use is if you deliberately concealed information. So let's say during your process, right? So let's say in your DS260, you don't list your Facebook page, right? And later on, they want to disqualify you, or they want to even take your visa away. What they can do is they can go back and they can say, hey, in your DS260, you didn't include your Facebook information. We know you've got a Facebook. You didn't include it. You're obviously trying to hide something, and therefore we're going to take your visa away because you had deliberately lied in order to get your visa. Had we searched your Facebook account at that time, we might have decided that you were undesirable, and we might have refused your visa. So we're just going to take it away now. So it's extremely unwise to not include information. You guys need to listen to this. You need to answer all the questions in the DS260. It is not enough for you to say, oh, I'm just going to give them the education from my high school and above. You need to go back to age 11 or 12 and list all of your education all the way through. You need to give them all of your address history. You need to give them all of your social media history, all of your work history. You need to do all those things because that's what the questions ask for. And you need to be transparent. You need to follow the instructions. Okay. Some of you think that you know better than I do. Some of you think that you know better than the government. And, and some of you think you're just going to answer the DS260 the way you'd like to do it. And you are being very unwise. Maybe it will never bite you in the ass, but maybe it will. So I wouldn't do that if I were you. So will it cause denial? Well, no, because they won't know about that account unless they've done a search that has revealed that account. So generally speaking, no, but it could do. I mean, technically, they can deny you for any reason they want. Will it cause you denial? I can't say 100% it will cause denial. I think it's going to be a small percentage risk, but it's still an unwise thing to do. Okay. Happy Kids Cartoon says, hi, sir, DB26 AS case number 17,000. Thank you for giving me all the information. That has saved an angel from dying. Any chances of getting an interview call due to Iran and Afghanistan banned? Yeah, so because Iran and Afghanistan and Yemen, they're all banned, that's thousands of people. I am expecting there could be some increase in speed in the visa bulletin to an extent. However, they will still be scheduling those cases from Iran, Afghanistan, Yemen, and so on. They will still be scheduling those cases. They'll still be processing all of those DS260s. So it's not like it's going to be lightning fast for the rest of Asia. It's not going to be like that. But there will be slightly more visas available throughout the year because less and less people are going to be getting approved in cases. Less will be showing up. You know, a lot of people who are in travel banned countries won't even show up for their interviews. And so, yes, there'll be more visas available, and maybe the visa bulletin will move faster because of that. We'll have to wait and see, though. We don't know if the travel ban will be removed at some time, right? So we don't know. Right. Free, but people get advantage of that and enter more than once, I think you mean to say, Cuddlebear. Yeah, I understand, but they've got ways of stopping that. Technology stops duplicate entries already, right? So the thing about the passport rule and saying, yeah, but all these duplicate entries are ruining the thing. No, they're not. They're creating holes. That's all they're doing. The people who are doing fraudulent entries are getting caught and disqualified and banned for life. So don't worry about that. Technology will sort it out. What if I fail to bring form I-134? You can be disqualified at your interview if the consular officer decides that you're going to be a public charge, that you're going to become a public charge, that you won't be able to support yourself. So if you've got a good job and you're highly likely to get a good job in America, or you've got your own savings, then you don't need an I-134, right? If you're in one of the countries where they're less concerned about I-134s, like, for example, Sydney in Australia, then perhaps it's not such a big deal. But personally, I wouldn't go to an interview without an I-134, or at least a statement of my own savings and so on. I would take some steps to go to an interview with my financial situation documented, personally. That's just my thing, okay? Did they fix DV Lottery 2026 yet? We don't know. If you're talking about the UK entries, we don't know. They may have quietly fixed it in the background. And if I heard from a DV26 UK winner, then I would know that to have been the case. But so far, I've got no indication whether they have or haven't fixed DV26, and they're going to have to. Hi, sir. To play DV Lottery with passport, we're going to use the passport number. Yes, that's what they're going to ask for. Hello, Britt Simon. Anything new for Casablanca for DV25? No news for Casablanca. Every time I see you, it reminds me of my DV journey, settling well in Tacoma, Washington, DV24, case number 64K. Awesome. Good luck, Ken. DV26, my host just told me his taxes aren't in order, so he can't give me the documents or fill I-134. I don't have other options to get a US host. What options do I have? Can I self-sponsor? Mary, you can show your own savings. If you have at least, and I would say at least $10,000 per person on your case, then your own savings will carry you through. If, on the other hand, you don't have that, but you've got a very, very highly sought after job, let's say you're in technology or something, then you might be okay. If you don't have that, if you don't have a job that means you're very likely to get a job straight away, you need to have a solid plan of some sort about how you're going to avoid becoming a public charge. So having a host in some countries is all you need. In some of the African countries, they do respect the host system, as I call it. It's not really a system. It's an informal thing. But the fact that you have a host can be enough to get you by the interview. It's different in every case, Mary. But you've got time. You're DV26. You've got plenty of time, right? Hey, Simon, do you know of any South Africans who won for DV26? I'm sure there are some. I don't know them personally. Thanks, Britt, for your help through the process in 24. I'm now a happy US citizen with less than 1 year serving the nation now. That's fantastic, Joe. Well done. You're not a citizen yet. You're a lawful permanent resident. You're not a citizen, right, Joe? Don't think so. Even though you're serving the nation, don't think you've got fast citizenship yet. Crockett Red countdown lift Rocket Red, yeah. Case 45K, DV25, Nairobi Embassy. Any hope? Not really, Red Jeb. It's been clear for some time that they wouldn't get to that level. Like if we look at where Nairobi got to, it went up to about 26,000. There's no way they can fill in the gap between 26,000 and 45,000. That's way too many interviews. So no, there's no hope for that. You should have moved, I'm afraid. I've been saying that for months. I'm sorry. I can't force you to do what I say, right? I can only say it and advise you and hope you listen. Some of you won't listen, and some of you, therefore, are going to lose your green cards because you didn't listen or you didn't take action. You listened perhaps, but you didn't take action or couldn't take action or whatever. But yeah, you're going to lose your chance, Rajab. I'm sorry about that. My husband's mother's maiden surname was spelled wrong on the DS260 versus her ID, and we did not know that her surname was misspelled on her ID. Will this affect? Will that affect? Or can we get an affidavit? You don't need an affidavit. It won't affect you. They won't ask for any proof about that in the interview. They're not going to see her ID, right? You know, your husband's mother is not turning up for the interview. So they're not going to ask for the ID. So this is an example of somebody getting worried over a non-issue. Nairobi 25, hang in there. Something can happen. Expect anything, everything, or nothing. There are a lot of people like Patrick that want to be optimistic until the last moment. I understand that. I don't want to steal your optimism from you. I'm a bit more of a realist myself, so I have a slightly different perspective about that. But I understand where you're coming from, Patrick. Mutaza, what happens to those who had their interview after the travel ban and the consular says that their case number is under review for NIE at the Department of State? They're not going to get the NIE. That's what's going to happen, Mutaza. Is it for Pakistani also? Is what for Pakistani? Is the passport part of the requirements for entering DV27? Well, they're trying to make it that way, but it's not for certain yet. Hello, Simon. Could you explain the situation with health insurance in the USA? Yeah, health insurance is a stupidly big con in the USA. What can I say about health insurance? In general, it is very unwise to live in America without having health insurance. You can either buy that yourself through a website called healthcare.gov. You can go on that website and you can see what the cost of healthcare policies will be in your area or your planned area. Or more typically, you get your healthcare insurance through your employer. I'm the latter. I get my healthcare insurance through my employer, right? And I can tell you that with my employer, they require me, they would give me a healthcare policy for just me for free. That would be part of the benefits of working for my company, right? And that would cost them maybe, $600 or $700 a month, something like that. But I choose to take my policy as a family policy covering my daughter and my wife. And the cost of that policy is about $2,300 a month, I think. A bit more than that, maybe 25. It's almost $30,000 a year. That's what it costs, right? The company covers about $20,000 of that, and I pay about $10,000 of that. Roughly speaking, it's something like that. I don't know the exact numbers. Then, if I go to the hospital or see the doctor or whatever, every time I want to go see the doctor, I have to pay a little bit of money, 20, 30 bucks or something. It's not a lot, but it's annoying because I know I'm paying $30,000. And then I see the bills that the healthcare company cover. And, it's when you see the bills are absolutely ridiculous numbers. Like if you break your leg or something, you go to the hospital, you have it set and you walk out, that will cost $30,000. Right? $35,000. So if you don't have insurance, you might be asked to pay that $30,000 bill. With insurance, you might only pay a few $100s of that bill. Depends on your insurance policy. You can have a very expensive policy like mine, or you can have a cheaper policy where you've got more responsibility, more of the costs. If you're younger, you tend to go for one of the cheaper policies per month. Maybe you could cover a whole family for, let's say, $15,000 a year. But if you ever need to use the health insurance, your exposure, the amount of money you pay will be higher. So you have to weigh that up and say, okay, I'm relatively healthy or I'm not or whatever. I have a 17-year-old, daughter, always doing crazy stuff. I'm scared about her. I'm getting older. I need a healthcare policy. My wife, is a normal, young, healthy woman, but nevertheless, she's a woman, and therefore, needs a certain amount of stuff. It needs to see the doctor occasionally for stuff, right? And so, all of us are users of a healthcare policy. Therefore, I make sure that I pay for the best healthcare policy I can get, and that hopefully avoids me, having any massive bills that I couldn't afford to pay. So it's a mess in this country. There's a whole video I've done on healthcare. I'll have a look for that and make sure, and maybe I'll refresh that. But it's a freaking mess. It's one of the worst things about America is the healthcare system, and Americans don't understand how stupid and how bad it is. They think it's good, but whatever. Okay, Manamala family. Also, I sent an email to KCC and they confirmed that we have submitted a complete and valid DS260 for each family member, and they tell us how and they tell us how interviews will be scheduled. Does this mean processed? Yes, it does. Yeah. Hello, Brit Simon. If I change my interview embassy through unlocking the DS260, do I need to email the previous embassy or KCC? It's not as simple as you think. Basically, you can't, when you unlock your DS260, you will not be able to change the embassy that's selected in the drop-down list. That's never going to allow you to change that. Doesn't matter what you do, you can't change that selected embassy. However, you can change your address, and your address will then affect which embassy they assign you to, right? So you can do that. But if you're a DV25, it's probably too late to do any of this. But I don't know because you haven't told me the details. Okay, right. Oh, sorry, Mutaza. I've had my interview on July 7th. My case number got updated 2nd July and 7th of July, but my case status still shows ready. I'm from a travel ban country. Yeah, you're not getting you're not getting a visa, Mutaza. They've banned you. I'm sorry to tell you, it doesn't matter how often your case is updated. It doesn't matter. They're not going to give you the visa. Masimba, hello, Simon. I'm a DV25 selectee AF58K and got 58K. That's one of the highest. Got 2NL for interview in Harare for September. Congratulations. Now Harare has, Jesus. Now Harare has suspended visa interviews. Can I transfer my case to UAE as I have a UAE residence? Is there still time? Yes, there is still time. Yes, get on that immediately. Don't waste any more time. You didn't even need to ask me, frankly. You should be contacting UAE, explain what's happened, and ask, beg, do whatever you have to do to get them to say, yes, we'll schedule you in September. And then you contact Harare and they'll move that for you with a bit of luck. There is time, so get on with it. Hello, Brit Simon. Croatia seems to get much less selectees compared to other Balkan countries in the past couple of years. Why do you think that is? It's very, very simple. They have less entries. You can go look at this. This is not the complicated thing you seem to think it is. If you have two countries, let's say you've got two countries side by side, both of them have 50 million inhabitants, right? Their population is 50 million. But in country A, 1 million of their people apply for the DV lottery. And in country B, 10,000 people, or let me keep it, 10,000 people apply for the DV lottery. That's a 100-to-1 difference between the two countries. Now, there are various reasons why that can happen. Often that happens because in country A, you've got some agency or whatever who are sort of encouraging people to apply. It does happen, right? But quite simply, if you get 100 entries for every one entry over here, what do you think is going to happen in a random draw? You're going to have less winners from the smaller number of entries, and that's all it is. There is absolutely no difference in the selection chances between any of the regions any of the countries in a region, except for a few specific countries that have a ridiculously high number of entries. But that's not really what we're talking about with Croatia. Okay, so Croatia have an identical chance to the other Balkan countries. It's just that they get less entries. Simple as that. Hello, is Egypt likely to send 2NLs this month? Yes, but more for DV26 than for DV25. For my DS260, I use my uncle's address since it's his house, and my dad got his green card in 2024. Should I still show my bank statement since my uncle and dad will be sponsoring my stay from the start? Yeah, go fully prepared. Show your bank statements. Go ready to explain who you're going to live with and so on. Just fully prepared, right? Good morning, Mary. How you doing? Mary says, can we expect more 2NLs from Egypt? It seems the first batch was purely for Egyptians. I don't know, Mary. I'm not sure. I'm a DV25 winner. I'll pass the interview in the 16th of September. If I pass the medical test and I have a good file, is there any other reasons to doesn't get a visa? Look, until the visa is in your hands, you cannot be guaranteed about it, right? You have to wait until that visa is physically in your hands, right? So please don't make any plans or promises or do anything assuming that you're going to get your visa. Wait until you've got it in your hand, about the 20th of September. Things can happen. There could be, I'm not going to go into it, but things can happen. Okay. And so I don't know what will happen. I have no reason to think you're not going to get your visa, but nevertheless, just be cautious until it's in your hand. Okay. Imad, I'm 11K DV 26 Algeria. Okay. So Algeria, so your Africa region. So I'm going to unkill one of the angels. That's a good number. It's relatively low. You might get current by December of this year, maybe. If you submitted your DS260 early, you might get interviewed by December of this year, roughly. But it's kind of frustrating for people with high case numbers when people with, frankly, really low case numbers are so desperate to know their situation and need to know. I've been having a guy who's been pestering me for an answer about his case number. He's asked me so many times, I can tell you the bloody case number. AS 4561, I think it is, or 4551. It's a low case number. This guy can't seem to get the message that, look, I'm ignoring your questions because you want to know. It's really important that I get straight back to you and tell you when you're going to be interviewed. And it's like, look, use some bloody patience. You don't have a problem. You've got a low case number. You're in Asia. 4,500 is great. What is the problem with you just waiting, right? Just show some patience. And the same thing, Imad, for you. 11K in Africa is a low case number. In Asia, it would have been a high case number. So relax. Everything's going to be fine. Just, chill out. Okay. Hello, Britt Simon. Thanks for what you do. I'm case number 30, AF37K, DV26. When should I expect my 2NL and interview in Nairobi, Kenya? That's going to be a big question to see how Nairobi start to schedule cases, right? If we look again at what they did in DV25, they took cases in November and then they took nothing for the next, 9-10 months, right? Will they do that again? I don't know. If they do that, then you could be in risk in Nairobi. Do they come out the door in October and November and December and take cases every month? Maybe they will. We just don't know, right? So we'll have to wait and see how they behave. It's all about the behavior of Nairobi Embassy. Okay. I've been emailing the principal embassy in Nairobi and they never ever responded to my emails. So my move to Thailand sounds like an only choice for me. Okay. That's it's probably the safer choice, to be honest with you, Sean. So it's probably not a bad problem to have. Bangkok's lovely this time of year. Go ahead. Hi, Simon. It might be a bit hot, actually. Hi, Simon. For now, Kigali Embassy. How is do? How is do? I have case number AF13K. When is it possible for doing interview? I don't know, and it's probably DV26, and who knows. Hi, Brett. Hi, Brett. Thanks for the great videos. I'm a DV26 winner. Case number AF32911 from Albania, Tirana Post. Do you think my number will be processed based on how things are going? Yeah, we don't know. We don't really know how high your case number actually is, right? So we have to sort of wait and see. I know we know the number. That's not what I'm saying. It's like how how high it is compared to the number of selectees we have. We don't know how many selectees. We don't actually know precisely the highest case number, although we got some good idea from the poll. But we have to wait and see what the number of selectees are per country. So we'll know a bit more this week coming, okay? Mary, I've been monitoring both Zarthesius and Philip page. Good. And the case never opened anywhere, including on transit till today. Interesting. Hi, Simon. Me and my family are EU26, 26 something winners. When do you think we'll get interviewed? Late 26, maybe, Carlo, but you don't tell me your... you told me the region. Yeah, EU26. Yeah, it's probably late in the process. But again, I don't know exactly where we're going to get to, right? Okay. Hi, Simon. Can political news change the travel ban for Iran? Any hope for 26 for Iranians at all? Iran is the last country I think would be helped, right? The government of Iran is like so clearly anti-America. I mean, it's a pain in the ass. And Iran is a pain in the ass, frankly, as a country, pretending to be the Republic of Iran and all this bravado nonsense. I mean, get over yourselves. And, you know, pretending to be a world power and going up against world powers, etc., is not a good way to behave. So the government of Iran are not doing you any favors at all, Aid. You know, just silly. Now, unfortunately, Trump is in power, right? And Trump loves having people that he can play, play tough guy with. And so Iran is just, you know, making that worse. So, you know, Israel's going to be pushing Iran around, and Trump is going to say, "Hey, that seems like a smart thing to do. I'll kick Iran while they're down as well." And so, you know, Iran's not helping itself. It's not your fault, obviously. It's no one. I mean, I don't blame the people of Iran. I blame the government of Iran. You know, you're probably, because of the government of Iran, you're probably likely to stay banned for quite some time, I would have thought. I'm just guessing, but we'll see. Hello, Britt. I'm a 26 winner in the UK on work visa. I had a spouse who we separated before I applied, so I applied as single and filed DS-260 as single. Any issue with that? What do you mean you separated? Were you legally married and you separated? If you were married and you applied as single, then you will be disqualified as soon as they find that out. And if you continue with the lie, and you ever, you know, come in front of USCIS and they figure out you were married, you're getting deported. So I hope you weren't married when you said you were single. So what do you mean by separated from your spouse? Right? Separated meaning you were unmarried, in which case I don't know why you're mentioning it. I think you were probably married, weren't you? And you said you were single. That was a very silly thing to do. Do you think Ethiopia will be banned? I think you mean banned. I don't know about banned. I don't think they're giving them any buns. But I don't know. I don't think so. But who the hell knows what Trump's going to do next? I don't know. How does a madman's brain work? I don't know. Hello, Simon. I am case number range 6K of 2026, and I finished filing my DS-260 on May 15th and open again in August 6th to update some changes. Would it affect my DS-260 processing or delay it? I mean, I don't know what you changed, right? I also don't know your region or anything else, so I don't really know how high your case number is. But it probably won't affect your DS-260 processing at all. People think unlocking affects DS-260 processing, and it generally doesn't, unless you're doing something like adding a spouse, in which case that spouse will need to be processed. So in general, most DS-260 changes are not going to delay you at all. Okay. Any chance to get second letter for DV25 high case number AS19K? 19K? No chance at all. Absolutely none. The visa bulletin that was published last month was the final visa bulletin for DV25. The numbers won't be changed. Okay. Joe Elf. Eve. Is it okay to answer yes in the DS-260 to having documentation to establish you've received vaccination in accordance with the USA law, knowing you will get your medical report before interview? Okay, so I always tell people to answer no to that question, because the reality is you do not have documentation in accordance with US law. Why would you have documentation in accordance with US law? Why would France produce a documentation that is in accordance with US law? They wouldn't. And so the answer to that question for me is a no. However, it doesn't matter whether you answer yes or no to that question. It's one of those important sounding questions that isn't important at all. So don't worry about it. It's not going to cause you any problem. Okay. Somebody, Manamela. Yeah, of course. I'm here in South Africa. Somebody asked about, are there any South African winners? So you're in South Africa. There you go. Case number 57K, Egypt. Any hope? Mary, not for DV25, no. Don't think you're current, right? Are you current? I don't know the cutoff for Egypt, but it isn't going to change. The cutoff won't change. Ada, my daughter is under 21 years old, has a spelling mistake in her case, only one letter. When we enrolled in the first time, we wrote the right one, the DS260, and it's the same as in the passport. Is that okay? Yeah, it's fine. No problem. It's correct in the DS260. That's what's important. When placed on 221G, do they email you the outcome if refused or accepted? Yes, they do, Peter. Is the passport issue affecting the 2027 applicants in my country? The passport is in my country, the passport is way too expensive. We don't know for sure, Darius, whether the passport rule is going to be in place for DV27 entry period or not. It might be, it might not. If it isn't, and you don't have a passport, then you can't enter. So, it's up to you what you do about that. Peter says, on July 17th, the US Embassy scheduled interviews exclusively for Egyptian applicants. Would you kindly clarify why transfer cases from other countries were not included? My case is 52K. I don't know. They didn't contact me and let me know what's going on. Okay. Hi, Britt. I got dual passports since my origin country is banned. So most info on both passports are the same, except 1 month difference between the two passports. Any concern? Since my 1 month difference between the two passports. One month difference in what between the two passports? 1 month difference in what? I don't know. I can't read your mind. Cato says, if I use a passport, my results before getting certificate for high school, will it be allowed at the embassy? Maybe. It varies by country. There are 190 countries around the world that process in the lottery. I don't know the educational systems or the verification processes for each and every one of those 190 countries. So I don't know. Hi, Brett Simon. Is it possible to get derivatives through I-824 with the remaining time? Yes. You're talking about follow to join. Follow to join is a process where you as the principal applicant go through an adjustment of status in America and then file an I-824 to bring the family through an interview process in their home country and then have them join you. When you do that, you have to get cooperation between the home embassy and the consulate or the immigration officer in the field office where you adjust status. You can't just turn up to your adjustment of status interview, not mention it, right, and expect them to sort of magically know that they've got to rush through this process for the I-824. So you have to get them on board, and if you get them on board, then there is time, right? So you should be, working with the field office and getting them, preferably, this is the ideal, getting them to email your spouse's home embassy and get them to do that arrangement and set a date for you. It's all possible, and I've seen it done even with cases that have their AOS interview very, very late in September. It's possible, but you have to take it into your hands and you have to make it happen. You can't just assume, please God, don't assume that the American government are organized and they will just know to do things. If you don't tell them exactly what to do, what you need them to do, if you're not on it, if you're not chasing them, then it won't get done. So you need to see that through yourself. Okay. How can I update my host details after I'm already scheduled for an interview? You can do that at the interview. If your host has changed their address or something like that, you can just change that address at the interview. Okay. I'm very interested. DV Visas Lottery in the America. Good. Thank you. Hello, case 57K from Addis. Any hope for us? Probably not. Abjada, £5. I don't know what that means. Did you just donate me £5? That's sweet of you. Thank you. Harari processing and scheduling paused. Yeah, we talked about this earlier. We talked about this earlier. Should the one who gives the address in the DS260 be the same one who filled the I-134? It doesn't have to be. You can use an address where you're going to have your green card sent or where you're going to be hosted. You can use that, and that could be a different person from the I-134 sponsor. So you can have a financial sponsor who is disconnected from that address that you've got in your DS260. That's perfectly fine. The financial sponsor doesn't even have to be in the same state as you. Okay, they can be anywhere. We were legally separated, but couldn't say married as was in process, and couldn't say legally separated as it was on process. So you were married. Stop dicking around. You're saying a lot of words there, but you weren't legally separated if it was in process. If you were legally processed, which is where you go to court and they approve your legal separation. Number one, it means you were married. Otherwise, you wouldn't have had to go through that process. Number two, it means your legal separation process was not completed. Otherwise, you could have said legally separated in your DV entry. So actually, you were married, not legally separated, and you lied, therefore, on your entry saying you were single, which doesn't make sense anyway. You weren't single. If you'd have said legally separated, that might have made sense, even though you didn't have the documentation to show that you were legally separated. If you'd have said married, that would have been more truthful. It would have been the truth, actually. But to say single, that's just obviously a lie. And if you tell a lie in the DV lottery process, you're going to be disqualified. Honestly, my advice to you is don't continue with the process because it's not a good idea to lie to the US government. Hi, currently residing in Rwanda. Does 2NL getting over AF58? I don't know whether they're going to send him any more interviews or not. Hello, how are you doing? My DV24 to 25. DV25. Case number is 2542. I'm in Sierra Leone. Okay. Good job, my son. Good job. Best message of the day. I got a message from God, and he says, "Good job, my son. Watching you from heaven." Thank you so much, God. Well done. I spoke to Jesus earlier. I mean Jesus. Sorry, people that are religious probably think I'm the worst possible person because I've got no respect for organized religion, spirituality all day long. You know, believe in God if you want. I don't care. It doesn't affect me. It's only religions that drive me nuts. But yeah, thanks for the laugh. Appreciate it. God. Kelly, hi Brit. Sorry. I meant 1 month difference between the date of birth between the two passports. Right. Were you born twice? The passports are one from banned country and the other is not banned. Right. So here's the thing. These sort of mistakes that are made in passports are usually evidence that you've used some sort of bullshit documentation to get the second passport. That's the problem. And you know it's the problem, right? If you get a passport that has got the wrong date on it, like it's got your birth date, the most natural thing in the world is to go back to the issuing authority and say, hey, you've made a mistake with my birth date, right? If you didn't do that, it's because they didn't make a mistake because that's the information you gave them. And if you gave them that information, it's probably because you created some false document trail in order to show that you were born a second time. And you weren't born a second time. Mothers don't do that, right? And so I'm very worried that your documentation is going to catch you out. Now, are they going to see that? Only if you present both passports. So it's obvious what you need to do but it wasn't a smart thing to do, was it? And it might catch you out. So I don't know what your documentation looks like, but you don't need to ask me any more questions about this, and I'm not going to discuss it any further. Okay, Peter. Hi, kindly clarify the scheduling policy for immigrant visa interviews in CRO. Is there a reason interviews drink, swallow, talk in that order? Not drink, talk, swallow. What an idiot. As I'm getting older, I'm getting dribbly. Hi, kindly clarify the remaining. Is there a reason interviews are currently being scheduled for Egyptian cases while transfer cases aren't? Okay. That is probably to do with the prioritization, etc. I don't know what you mean by transferred cases. I don't think you mean what transfer means. I think you mean people that moved their case to Cairo. But it's really about the AV queue, a queue of people in AV status. If somebody is ahead of you in the AV queue, even though your case number is lower than them, they're going to get scheduled before you. So that's probably what's going on. And it's being represented as they're only scheduling Egyptians. They don't actually know. So when they pick cases to schedule, KCC do it, they don't do it based on who's transferred, who's Egyptian, who's not Egyptian, who's wearing a pink shirt. They don't do it on those reasons. They just pick them numerically and in the order that they were put into the AV queue. That's all it is. But some of you are just assuming, obviously, that, they're only scheduling Egyptians. That's not what's going on. But, I got no proof for that, and I'm not even going to bother trying to prove that. It's just, but so you're probably not going to believe me, and I don't really mind. That's fine. Hello, Britt Simon. On the question of health insurance, how soon should one consider getting it as a new immigrant? Day one, and I'm not kidding. Day one, you should get something. Actually, what you should probably do is go to my blog. Britt Simon Says, but you can Google the words Britt Simon health insurance. And there is a type of policy you can buy as a bridge plan that gives you at least some protection. So you've got to have some protection for that period of time when you've arrived, before you get a job, and before you get health insurance, etc., which can be a few weeks or a couple of months even. You need something to protect you for that period of time. Because literally you can be crossing the road, get run over by a bus or something, break your legs, and find yourself with a $50,000-$60,000 bill because you broke two legs. It happens. I got a pretty sad contact from a guy where that had happened. It wasn't a broken leg situation, but his kid got sick. So you fly on the planes. When you're in a plane, it's very common to get sick a few days after you arrive somewhere when you've been on a plane, because you're in a plane, surrounded by all those germs, etc. For hours and hours and hours. You're stressed, you're weakened, you're jet lagged, and then you get sick, right? And so then what do? Right? You have to go see a doctor. Sometimes you could be so sick that you might go to an emergency room. Please don't do that. Go to an urgent care. That's cheaper. Don't go to an emergency room. Go to urgent care. But nevertheless, sometimes people have to go see a doctor and get some medical care immediately upon arrival or within a few days. And that happened to someone who mailed me, and they got into a pretty big mess because they, suddenly found themselves getting into all sorts of big bills, which is unfortunate. So really, you need some sort of insurance coverage from the day you arrive in America, either from the country where you left, some sort of travel policy, but those typically get nullified because actually you've moved to that other country, or a bridge policy such as the type that you can buy through a recommendation I make on my website, or quickly get onto the healthcare.gov site and try and get that, but that won't be quick enough to cover you for the first couple of weeks. So you need something to bridge that gap, in my opinion. Morris says, USCIS interview is on 22nd this month. Should I form the I-824 now together with the DS-260 before the interview? You need to talk to mum, someone's mum, in the forums.immigration.com and confirm the I-824 process. She's got all the information you need. She's the expert on adjustment of status. Morris, you should be following her advice, not mine. I don't want to confuse you, but don't just send the form, into thin air. You do that at the interview. But anyway, talk to mum about that. Okay. By having enough funds in your bank account, can you avoid filling the I-134? Yes, you can. Let me go back to that question. They will take the full circumstances into account. So if you've got your own money, then that's good enough. Okay. Hello from Romania, says DD. Thank you. Let's see if I can just take a few more questions quickly and get to the bottom. My case number is 31590 in Nairobi, Kenya. 26 lottery. Which month do you think I can get my interview? I don't know, but it's more important that you get your interview. You're worrying about the month you can get your interview. I would be worrying, if I were you, whether you're going to get your interview, because if your number, if you had your number in DV25 and you were in Nairobi, you'd have just lost your green card. So stop worrying about pointless shit like what month am I going to get my interview. That's not important. Worry instead about how you're going to learn whether Nairobi interviews are going to get to your number or not. That's what you should be thinking about, right? DD says hopefully 27 is the one. Yeah. We appreciate you, Simon, says the Manamala family. That's nice. Hey, Britt Simon, what's the WhatsApp of social media account? What it is? Oh, WhatsApp. Is WhatsApp a social media account? Yes, it is, Ruth. Could you please advise on how much money we should show in our bank statement for the interview at the embassy for a family of 3? Our child is 4 years old. Didi, I think you would need to show at least $25,000, but I've been saying that for 10 years, $10,000 per person, and a little bit less for a child. So I wouldn't be at all surprised if the COs are now sort of increasing that number. And so, $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 would be better if you want to avoid an I-134. If either of you have a technology job or some very high paying and very much in demand job, then, it's not such a concern. Okay. Can stocks or crypto holdings be considered as liquid assets in offering proofs of savings? Yes, Danny, they can. Thank you, Simon, for all your help as a 2023 lottery winner. I've been living the American dream for the past 2.5 years. It's been an incredible journey. 2.5 years. That's through the difficult time. You're hopefully into the sweet spot. You know how things are going, Devor. Things are beginning to get a bit more comfortable. You're probably still missing some of the foods from home or whatever, but at least you know what to do with, tax filing, health insurance, seeing a doctor, getting kids in school. All that stuff is second nature to you now. So yeah, thank you for stopping by though, Devor. I appreciate your saying hi. That's great. Is it a good idea to move a case number 3K from UK to Nairobi as visa in UK is close to expire? Depends how close to expiry it is. 3K is likely to be, if you filed your DS260 very fast, early in May, if it's been processed, then 3K is likely to be interviewed in October. Are you going to have a visa till then? Don't know. You have to think about yourself. Ruth, Dunlop, you're saying it's like text. I don't agree with that. WhatsApp has channels and that sort of thing as well. So in that way, it's social media. I would say it's social media. And your reasoning that it doesn't have a page that can be public or private, no, I don't agree. Don't agree with any of that. Stand with us for a cancel Trump ban. We winners from Sudan. Yeah, that would be nice. Thank you for the education. You're on the DV lottery. Congratulations as well for the lawsuit outcome. Thank you. Ofori, I've entered US for exactly 5 weeks now. The GC and the SSN card haven't come. I used IAD. Okay, so if your SSN, your green card probably should have been there by now, but it's not such a big deal. But your SSN should have been there by now. And the fact that it isn't there by now means that a mistake has happened, a problem has happened, and you need to go to the Social Security office to figure that out, sort that out. You need to go and apply for your Social Security number. And if I were you, I wouldn't even get into it with them. I would just go in there and say, hey, I'm new to the country. Here's all my documentation. I need to apply for the social security number. Just do that. Okay. Having trouble getting to someone's mum. I can't seem to get the confirmation code on my email. I don't know why that would be, but you need to figure that out. If you don't figure that out, message me on britsimonsays.com and maybe I can help with that. I know someone's mum occasionally reads my messages, so if you mention her name, she might see it. If not, I can send her that message and she can advise you there. Okay. Dee, thanks so much for the advice. We both have high, tech jobs. Can't wait to use your photo app this time. Should we already translate our documents, diplomas, or have them ready, or should we wait? Dee, your chance, you're a bit jumping the gun here. Relax, calm down. Your chance of selection in the DV lottery process is about 1 in 100 years. So there's 2 of you entering, so you've got better chance than that. But still, it's a lottery. It's not a plan. So no, don't go rushing out, translating your documents, etc. You'll have plenty of time. You enter in October. You hear whether you're a winner or not next May. You can't begin to process. You can't begin to be interviewed until October. So, there's a year of waiting. You've got plenty of time to find out whether you need to translate documents and everything else. Chill out, calm down. You're going to be fine. Hopefully you'll be selected, but you can't guarantee you're going to be selected. So you don't go doing all that stuff now. Okay. Is second travel ban in September? We don't know whether any more countries will be added to or taken away from the travel ban. Like I say, Trump is a mystery, right? What do I need to go with for the interview as Kenyan doing interview in the UK? All the required documents. So read the instructions, right? There's 3 sets of instructions you have to read. You're given the link to the first set in the original selection letter, but you can also Google it and with the words, this is the words, if you are selected. You just type in that to Google and it takes you to the right page. And in that main set of instructions, there are links to 2 other places. One is to the reciprocity page, which is where you go to find out what documents you need from a specific country and how you get those documents, like a police certificate or birth certificate or whatever. That's all documented in the reciprocity page. And then there are embassy-specific instructions. So you need to read all of those instructions, all 3 of those, to find out what documents you need in your case, right? Now, because you're a Kenyan going in for interview in the UK, have a think about how you would verify any of your documents, right? Just have a think about that as well. Maybe there's something you can do. Visa is expiring in September. Okay. If it can't be extended, then, and you have to think about whether it makes sense to come back for a quick trip. That might be the way to do it, or extend it. I don't know. Have a think about that. I think you would know whether you're going to be scheduled in October or not in August. In other words, you'd know before you have to leave. And so then maybe you can do your medical before you have to leave and then go somewhere else for hang out for a month or something in France or whatever, and then come back in, do a quick trip back into the UK in October, right? You could do something like that. Okay. Okay, Mary, what's the last date for a consular to send the 2NL for DV25? And does Egypt always conduct up to the last person based on CRO performance over the years? No, CRO does not always go to the last numbers, not even close, right? They will probably stop when their capacity runs out, and they will probably disappoint some people, Mary, I'm sorry to say. More likely than not that they will disappoint some people. What's the last date for them to send? Well, in some years they've sent 2NLs in September for September interviews, but it's very, very rare. And generally speaking, we're getting to the point where the interviews for September should have been arranged by now already. And if they haven't been, that probably is not a good sign. Is there any chance for DV25 to increase the numbers in the next bulletin for September? I'm DV25, EU 26,000. No, there's absolutely no chance. That's not going to happen. 100% no. Sorry. Can cohabiting be used as evidence of marriage? No, because cohabiting is not evidence of marriage. So how could it be used? Right? No. Marriage is a legal process typically. There are some versions of that in different countries around the world, but it normally has documentation. Living together, which is cohabiting, that doesn't mean a damn thing, right? And to the American psyche, so you live together. So what? It doesn't mean you're married. We're asking, the question is whether you're married or not. So answer that question. It doesn't matter whether you've been living together. That might be culturally different where you come from, but that's not the point. It doesn't matter where you come from. It's how it appears to the American legal system. And what they want is legal proof that you're married. Okay. Didi, haha, you're right. I should tone it down a bit. Yeah. I hope the odds are in your favor. No, the odds are not in your favor, but the chances are really, really, really low. Yeah, they are. But that's okay. Even really, really low chances work, you know. We'll see. Afternoon, Brit. So you don't need a sponsor if you have at least 10K per person. I'm an F1 student, PhD, and I've been trying my hand at the DV lottery since DV23. Yeah, you can show your own savings. The guidance for the consular officers explains that they are to use the totality of circumstances. So they can use the fact that you've got savings as evidence that you won't become a public charge. They can do that. They can also say, hey, here's this PhD educated person. They're going to get a job straight away, blah, blah, blah. So that can work too, right? Peter, is it possible for CRO to send more 2NLs, especially after 2026 October VB? Well, it is possible, but becomes less and less likely, okay? It's a bit frustrating. I wish there were a final sort of line in the sand that I could tell you where I could say, look, on that date, you can give up. But it's not like that. You can only give up on September 30th, realistically. But at the same time, if you haven't got an interview by the time they're starting to schedule DV26 interviews, it probably is bad news, right? Do you think there'll be issues with DV27 with Trump and all that? I'm sure there'll be issues with DV27 because of Trump. He's going to be dicking around with things. And it's just the man's nature. He's a pain in the ass, isn't he? So yeah, there's going to be some problems. Okay, I've got to the end of the questions. I'm not going to take any more. So. Hope that was an interesting session with you today. If you joined me for the live session, and if you made it through this far, I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up on the video, and also make sure you're subscribed to the channel, please. I'd appreciate that. Thanks, everyone. All right. Bye-bye.